Hi, welcome to Highland Cottage Books. I'm Martha, and this is Highland Cottage. And this week I'm going to talk about 5 new releases that I read in March that I thought were great, and I rated them as 4 or 5 stars. So grab a coffee or a tea, I made both, and have a seat on the couch, and let's talk books. The first book I want to talk about is You Are Fatally Invited, a thriller mystery story about a reclusive and secretive writer, the world's most famous writer, who writes under a pen name and no one knows who they are, invites 6 other successful authors for a week of a writing retreat and also games. So every night, they are told they will play a puzzle or a game over dinner. And during the day, they're going to work on their bestsellers. Everyone wants to be there because no one knows who J.R. Allister is. And so that's a cachet unto itself. Plus, they want to see what the other writers are up to. And some of them are friends, some of them are not. And it is a wild ride. In a lot of ways, this book reminds me of a certain movie from the 70s that was very popular in my household. It would be a little bit of a spoiler to tell you what that movie is. So I'm going to leave in the description the initials and maybe a little hint. So if you want to check that out, you can see it. And if you know what I'm talking about, and if you read this book and you agree, please leave a note in the comments. In some ways, this book is very predictable, but it's that way on purpose because it's absolutely playing with you. It is expecting you to expect certain things so that it can pull the rug out from you. All in all, this book was tons of fun and I highly recommend it. In Lisa Unger's latest book, Close Your Eyes and Count to 10, a YouTuber invites a group of influencers to come to a remote island to play a game of hide and seek. Obviously, since this is a thriller, things don't go the way you're expecting. In a lot of ways, things don't go the way the reader is expecting either. When I was picking this up, I was thinking, oh, this is probably going to be something like Squid Games. That's the new trope that we're working with. But this actually subverts a lot of expectations in a lot of amazing ways. I was actually really impressed by the way Lisa Unger had her characters make the difficult choices. And I don't mean difficult in the sense of, morally correct or hard choices for them to make. I mean from a writer's point of view. She had them make choices that were absolutely realistic, but aren't what you're expecting. And it wasn't that she was writing herself out of holes, she was writing herself into some very interesting plot points and interesting places to explore. So this book, actually, a lot like the cover, is much deeper than you're thinking it's going to be. I think, in short, I can say that I went into this book expecting one kind of chaos and I got another, but I was happy with the result. In The Unworthy by Agustina Basarica, a woman is a member of a very strict religious community that's very isolated in a world that has been ecologically ravaged and is destroyed by war. It is a world without mercy. And she lives in this community as a member of one of the lowest tiers, the unworthy. And it's a very strict hierarchy in this community. And she aspires to be a member of the enlightened, which is where the most favored women go. And it's a community of almost entirely women. There's only one man and they never get to see him. And every day is its own trial. This book is exceptionally bleak. And if you have any sensitivities, I highly recommend you check out the content warnings. It is very dark. Basarika explained that when she grew up, she went to a Catholic school where the nuns sort of set the kids against each other to tell on each other. And I think that this book was absolutely inspired by that. There is a lot of torture and a lot of violence in it. But that all having been said, it is very beautifully written, and she creates this world that's very rich with just a few details. The reader is forced to sort of fill in the scaffolding with all sorts of colors that she paints. It's wonderful in that sense. I can't say that I really like this book, but I can absolutely say that I admired it, and I think that you should read it. I mean, like it by, it's doesn't have a good beat, and you can't dance to it. But at the same time, I imagine that it's going to find its way on a lot of college syllabi. But it's very, 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 very dark, just so you know. It also has one of the most beautiful descriptions I've ever read of physical love. In this case, it's between two women. It's not graphic at all, although the rest of the book is very graphic. It is just transcendent what she writes about it. So I certainly recommend it. This having been said, you may have read Tender is the Flesh or heard of it by Bastarika, and I read that book. I started that book after reading this because I liked this book so much. Again, I said I liked it. I secretly did. But I got about 30 pages into that book and I put it down. And not because it wasn't well written. It was amazing. It was an incredibly well written book. And it was very compelling. But at the same time, I realized this is too much for me. I don't think I want those images in my head, and I know that it's getting under my skin in a bad way. So that having been said, this has similar tendencies, but if you feel that you're up to it, it's absolutely worth it. Victorian Psycho tells the story of Winifred Naughty, Notty, who's also very naughty, who is a governess who ingratiates herself with a family with very ulterior motives. And as the title might suggest, the end is a bloodbath. This book is exceptionally gory. It is listed under horror with reason, but the only scary parts of it are actually the realities of Victorian living with a lack of human rights and bad labor practices and workhouses and orphanages. It's told in a way that's very similar to Moll Flanders in the sense that, she's just having her little adventures, but instead of romantic escapades, she's telling you very drolly about how she's murdering people. It's very funny. It's a satire. Every time she said something that made me laugh out loud, I decided to mark it. And considering this book is 200 pages long, she's very funny. I highly recommend this book. I don't really want to go into it too much. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I think that if you like horror and you also have a sense of humor and possibly have read more than your fair share of Victorian literature, this will be absolutely up your alley. The last book was actually my favorite. It was You Killed Me First by John Mars, which starts off with a character, we don't know who it is, bound at the base of a bonfire, and it's Guy Fawkes night in England, so it is not going to go well for that person any moment now. And then suddenly goes back several months to a cul-de-sac in a neighborhood outside of London that's very nice. And there are 3 characters and their partners that we are following throughout the rest of the book. The first character is Margot, who is beautiful. She's rich. She's also incredibly selfish, shallow, status conscious, and hilarious. She is not someone that you would want to hang out with in real life, but she is very, very funny. She has very nice observations, but she's a very, very flawed person as well. She also has a little follower whose name is Anna, who is much more quiet and much more, just kind of going along with what's happening. And unfortunately, Margot gets a lot of her self-esteem by putting Anna down. Then a new person comes into the neighborhood named Liv and actually takes the house between those two women. And Liv is younger than Margot. She's more beautiful than Margot. And she's richer than Margot. And what's worst of all is she's happier. And everything she does appears effortless. Over the course of the book, it becomes clear that each of these women has a secret or two that they are desperately trying to keep hidden, and their allegiances switch over time. I found as a reader, my sympathies were also switching between the characters as well. There's absolutely no way you can guess where this book is going from the beginning to the end, but it is absolutely delightful, and I highly, highly recommend that you read it. So thank you for joining me this week. Next week, I'm going to talk about the rest of the books I read in March. I believe there will be 6 of them, and they will also be 4 and 5 stars. It was so good reading in March. Take care.